Hey guys, it's Mr. Drew and welcome back to another exciting science lesson. Today we're going to learn about the periodic table and what all those squares mean and how to read it. So let's look at today's question of the day. Could you use the periodic table information below to answer the following questions? How many protons, neutrons, and electrons would be found in a normal Mercury atom? So the first thing we need to do is look for the atomic number. The atomic number of Mercury is 80. 80 tells us that it's 80 protons. Now, protons are positive and electrons are negative. We want those both to be the same to balance out. So our proton number will be 80, and our electron number will also be 80. When it comes to figuring out the neutrons, we're going to have to take the mass and subtract the protons. Remember, the mass is the protons and the neutrons in the nucleus. Our mass is 201 if we round it. Taking away the 80 protons gives us a neutron number of 121 neutrons. Hopefully that is just a review and you guys are all set. If we look at the symbol of Mercury, we notice it's Hg instead of M or something like that. Let's see what Mercury looks like.
Mercury is special because it's the only metallic element that's a liquid at standard temperature and pressure. Its elemental symbol is Hg.
That's interesting.
Its elemental symbol is Hg because it's based on its older and much harder to pronounce name. It used to be called hydrargyrum, which is a combination of the two Greek words hydror and argyros, which mean water and silver. The density of Mercury is really high, so the small amount that I have here weighs a surprising 2.5 pounds. It's significantly denser than most other metals, so if we add something like a coin, it should float on top. Its melting/freezing point is around -39 degrees Celsius, so if we go below this, it's going to freeze solid. As it warms back to room temperature, it'll start melting, which I think looks pretty cool. It has a relatively low boiling point for a metal at only around 360 degrees Celsius. This makes it somewhat easy to purify by distillation, but I really don't recommend doing that, especially at home like I did, because it can be pretty dangerous.
So as you can see, every element has its own unique properties based on the number of protons, neutrons, and electrons. Let's see what we have coming up for you this week. Okay, the things to do at home. In your packet, you have a periodic table scavenger hunt, which will get you used to looking around the periodic table, looking for different elements and their names. The atoms family, again, in your packet, will also help you look at those squares of the periodic table and really be able to break down what is what. And don't forget, you've got your atom quiz, and that thing is due by Wednesday. Today we're going to find out how atoms are classified in that periodic table and what is the periodic table doing, and we're going to look at our notes. So why don't you get your packet out and follow along as we fill in the notes about the periodic table. So I've got a picture here of the periodic table, which you also have a copy in your notes. You might have a better one even in your agenda or online. There's some really nice ones. You can check out the links and see some. The periodic table, basically a chart that classifies all of the known elements into groups based on atomic number and common characteristics. So if you know how to read the periodic table, you really can start to learn a lot about each individual element and the properties it has. Just like Mercury had unique properties, some of the elements that you might find in or around Mercury on the periodic table might have some similar types of properties. If you need to pause, you can pause the video and then continue on when you are done. So what does it mean to be an element? An element is basically a pure material that is only made of one kind of atom. So we look at our periodic table and we have so many elements, 118 of them. Oxygen as a gas, silver could be in a ring, aluminum and foil and gold in their pure forms are on the periodic table of the elements. Why is it called the periodic table? Well, it's arranged in what we call periods or rows across the table. The atoms in each period have the same number of rings or orbitals where the electrons are found. And this is really good when you want to find out how to create a model or maybe make a drawing of a certain atom. All you need to know is what period or row across it could be found in. Let's look at an example. Everything in the third period, which is the third row, has 3 orbital rings. So if you're building or drawing any of these atoms, you're going to need 3 rings for all the electrons. Anything in the 7th row would need 7 rings. And sometimes people ask about these two down at the bottom. These actually fit up here. They're a connection to these other rows. So that, believe it or not, they are actually connected up there. Groups. If you read the periodic table as in columns, standing up and down, the atoms in each of these groups, sometimes called families, often have similar properties. They might look similar or behave similarly in reactions, just like family members are similar but not exactly the same. The periodic table has families. Everything here in group 1 has 1 electron in their outermost orbital, which they tend to donate, give away, and gives them an active chemical reaction. Group 18, on the other hand, are noble gases. They don't form compounds and are found in a gaseous state. Let's break down what these squares will look like. Atomic number, usually found at the top, a symbol, a name, and a mass. Let's just take a look at krypton, which is number 36. See if you can fill in all of these before I do, and if you need to pause, go ahead. I'm going to round the mass, because rounding helps me get a complete number of neutrons, whereas if I didn't, I would have a decimal in my neutrons. Okay, so protons, mass, neutrons, and electrons are all things that we've done before and should look pretty familiar to you. Now, period, remember period is the rows across. So I'm going to count 1, 2, 3. It looks like krypton is in the 4th row across. So we're going to call that period 4. And its group, if you remember, was in the 18th, also known as the noble gases. Again, the answer's there. All right, so to review, the most important things to remember. The atomic number always equals the number of protons. The number of protons is how we got the atomic number. The mass of every atom is the nucleus, so we're adding protons plus neutrons. Remember, electrons have no mass, so we're not including them. It's only the protons and neutrons. To get the neutrons, we just take the mass, subtract the atomic number from that, and that will give you the neutrons. Remember, mass minus protons equals neutrons. The number of electrons will be the same as the protons, in other words, the same as the atomic number in our balanced atoms, where the charges will balance out. Okay, one of the things to do in your packet is to fill out the atoms family math challenge. Let's look at the top, and you might have to flip ahead a page, look on the back of a paper there. The 8 represents the atomic number, which is equal to the protons or the electrons in a balanced atom. Our symbol for oxygen is just the letter O. Always first letter capital. If the symbol has 2 letters, first letter capital, second lowercase. Some elements, like Mercury, use the ancient terms, so Latin or Greek, or some other language, so you might see letters that don't seem to match, as in gold, the symbol being AU. Oxygen, the name, we all know what oxygen is. It's a gas. Mass, 15.999. We're going to round to 16 for what we need to do. Atomic mass is protons plus neutrons. So if I take the mass subtract out the protons, I'll get the neutrons. So, working on the atoms family, you will be completing that. There's also a scavenger hunt in your packet. In Schoology, you'll find a link to your quiz. Some classes it's in Schoology and some classes it's on eDoctrina. But either way, you're going to find everything you need. Make sure you're all caught up on all the work that you have. And you can always message me through Schoology as well. So I guess that's it for the periodic table today. I want to thank you guys for logging in and checking that out again. And congratulations if everything so far is caught up and up to date. And thanks again for checking in. I'll see you next time.